The containment field hummed around Alina Vance like a cage made of light. She stood perfectly still, her hands folded in front of her, her face showing nothing. Around her, 39 other humans waited in their own glowing prisons. Some were crying. Some were praying. Alina did neither. She had learned 8 months ago that tears changed nothing in this place. The orbital station was called Kethforin. It floated at the edge of Dominion space, far from any law that mattered. The Velith hegemony ran this place. They called it a trading hub. Everyone else called it what it really was: a slave market. Alina watched the aliens move through the auction hall. There were dozens of species here. Tall ones with too many arms. Short ones covered in scales. Creatures that floated instead of walked. They examined the captured humans the way shoppers might examine fruit at a market. Looking for bruises, checking for ripeness, a Velith auctioneer stepped onto the central platform. His skin was gray and covered in small ridges. His eyes were black and wet like oil. He wore expensive robes and spoke in a voice that carried across the entire hall. "Lot 47, he announced. Terran female. Age approximately 34 local years. Linguistic capabilities confirmed. Docile temperament. Physical condition intact." That was her. Lot 47. Alina Vance, who had once been Dr. Alina Vance, senior xenolinguist aboard the colony ship Prometheus, the ship that was supposed to carry 10,000 humans to a new home among the stars. The ship that had been intercepted by Velith Raiders 8. Months ago, most of the colonists had been sent to labor camps on mining worlds. But the educated ones were separated. Scientists, engineers, doctors. They were worth more as curiosities. Rich aliens liked to own clever pets. Alina had survived by being useful. She had a gift for languages. Always had, even back on Earth. She spoke 12 human languages fluently. In the 8 months since her capture, she had learned 5 alien tongues. The Velith handlers called her the clever animal. They meant it as praise. The bidding began. Numbers flashed on screens around the hall. Alina did not look at them. She had learned not to care who bought her. One master was much like another. She would survive. She would wait. And someday, somehow, she would find a way to help her people. Then something strange happened. The crowd began to whisper. Aliens who had been pushing forward to get better views suddenly stepped back. They created a path through the auction hall like water parting around a stone. A group of figures walked through that path. There were 5 of them. They moved slowly with the confidence of people who had never been rushed in their lives. They wore flowing white robes covered in patterns that seemed to shift and change when Alina looked at them directly. Their skin was pale, almost white, with a texture like cracked marble. Each of them had 4 eyes arranged in a vertical line down the center of their face. Alina did not know this species, but she recognized what they were immediately. The robes, the careful movements, the way every other alien in the room looked at them with fear and respect. These were priests, religious leaders of some kind, and they were powerful, very powerful. The whispers grew louder. Alina caught fragments in different languages. The same words kept repeating. Kethmari. The Kethmari are here. Why would the Kethmari come to a place like this? The leader of the group was old. His marble skin had deep cracks running through it. His 4 eyes were clouded with age, but still sharp. He carried a long staff made of some dark metal, topped with a crystal that pulsed with soft light. He walked directly to Alina's containment field and stopped. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Alina looked back. She had learned not to show fear. Fear made you weak. Weakness got you killed. The old priest spoke to his attendants in a language Alina had never heard. It was beautiful. Musical. The words flowed like water over smooth stones. She found herself leaning forward slightly, trying to catch the patterns. Then the priest turned back to her and spoke in universal trade speak. His pronunciation was rough, as if he rarely used such a common tongue. "What gods do your people worship, creature?" Alina considered lying. Many aliens responded well to certain answers. But something about this priest made her think truth would serve her better. Many, she said. Once, we had thousands of gods throughout our history. Now most of my people worship none. The priest's lowered eyes narrowed. Thousands, he repeated. You have had thousands of gods. Every culture had their own. Every civilization. When they fell, their gods often fell with them. But we remembered them. We wrote them down. We kept their stories even after we stopped believing. Why? Alina paused. No one had ever asked her that before. Because forgetting felt wrong. Those gods were part of who we were. Losing them completely would be like losing a piece of ourselves. The old priest was silent for a long time. His 4 eyes studied her face. Then he turned to the auctioneer and spoke a number. The auctioneer's scales flushed purple. That meant shock, Alina knew. The number must have been very high. Other bidders tried to counter. The priest simply spoke again. A higher number. The purple flush spread across the auctioneer's entire body. He looked like he might faint. No one else bid. Sold, the auctioneer managed to say. Lot 47. Sold to the Kethmari delegation. Lena felt her containment field deactivate. 2 of the younger priests moved to either side of her. They did not grab her arms or put chains on her wrists. They simply waited for her to walk with them. As she was led away, Alina noticed something strange. The other bidders would not look at the Kethmari. They kept their eyes down. Some of them were trembling. She had been bought by something more than wealthy collectors. She had been bought by the most powerful religious order in the known galaxy. She could see that now, in the fear on every face. Round her, she just did not know why. The priest with the staff walked beside her. Up close, she could see just how old he was. His movements were slow and careful. Like a man who knew his body was failing him. You are not afraid, he observed. Fear doesn't help, Alina replied. No, it does not. He glanced at her with something that might have been approval. You will be treated well, fed, housed comfortably. We are not like the Velith. What do you want from me? The priest smiled. It was a strange expression on his alien face. Not cruel. Almost sad. I want you to help me hear the voice of God, he said. Then he walked ahead, and Alina was led through the crowds of the auction hall, past all the other slaves and buyers and traders. She was put aboard a ship that was cleaner and more elegant than anything the Velith owned. She was given a small room with a soft bed and fresh water, and all through that first night in Kethmari custody. She lay awake in the darkness, turning the priest's words over in her mind. The voice of God. What did that mean? What could an alien religion possibly want from a human linguist? She did not know. But she was going to find out. Alina Vance had survived 8 months of captivity by being useful. By being clever, by watching and waiting and learning, she would do the same now. And whatever these Kethmari wanted from her, she would find a way to turn it to her advantage. For herself, for her people. For the thousands of humans still scattered across alien labor camps, waiting for someone to remember them, she was Lot for 7. She was the clever animal. And she was going to survive. She answered in a lost ancient tongue. The alien priest dropped his staff part. 2. The Temple of Echoes. The journey to Valith Prime took 12 days. Alina spent most of that time in her small cabin, thinking and watching. The Kethmari ship was nothing like the Velith vessels she had known. There were no chains here. No guards with shock sticks. No screaming in the night. Instead, there was silence. Clean floors. Good food brought to her door 3 times a day. A window that showed her the stars sliding past like scattered diamonds. It was the kindest treatment she had, received since her capture, and it scared her more than any cruelty ever had. Cruel masters were simple. They wanted to hurt you. They wanted to use you. You knew where you stood with them. But kind masters were dangerous. Kind masters wanted something from you. Something you might not want to give. On the 12th day, the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Alina pressed her face to the window and saw Valith. Prime for the first time, it was beautiful. The planet was mostly covered in water. Deep blue oceans stretched across its surface like silk. Islands rose from those waters, each one covered in white buildings that caught the light of the twin suns. Everything seemed to glow. Everything seemed peaceful. This was the sacred homeworld of the Kethmari theocracy, the center of a religion that ruled over 1,000 worlds. Alina had learned that much from listening to the crew during the journey. The Kethmari were not conquerors like the Velith. They did not need to be. Their faith was old and powerful. Other species came to them willingly, seeking wisdom, seeking blessing, seeking the favor of the Makers. Alina did not know who the Makers were yet, but she had heard that word whispered many times. The Makers. The first ones. The gods who came before. The Kethmari spoke of them the way humans once spoke of ancient deities. With love, with fear, with desperate hope, the ship landed on the largest island. Alina was led through streets of white stone, past temples and libraries and monuments older than human civilization. Aliens of many species walked these streets. Pilgrims, she realized. They had come from across the galaxy to visit this holy place, and they all stepped aside when the Kethmari. Priests walked past. The old priest who had bought her was named Voreth Selon. She learned this from a young acolyte who was assigned to guide her. His name was Kethan, and he was perhaps the only Kethmari she had met who seemed genuinely curious about her rather than simply cautious. High Priest Vorath is the leader of our order, Kethan explained as they walked. He has served the Makers for over 200 years. He is very wise, very patient. As the young alien paused, he is also dying. Alina filed that information away. Dying leaders made desperate choices. That could be dangerous. It could also be useful. She was taken to a building near the center of the island. It was not the largest temple, but somehow it felt like the most important one. The walls were covered in strange writing, symbols that seemed to twist and change when she tried to focus on them. Kethan noticed her staring. The sacred script, he said. The language of the Makers. We call it Sorinthi.
Yes.
The tongue of the first voice. Can you read it? The young acolyte looked almost embarrassed. No one can read it, not fully. Our scholars have spent thousands of years studying these texts. They have decoded fragments, pieces, enough to build our faith upon. But the spoken form of the language has never been reconstructed. No living throat has ever spoken Sorinthi, as it was meant to be spoken. Alina looked at the writing again. Her mind was already working, already seeing patterns. How old is this language? The texts date back approximately 400,000 years. They were old before my species built its first city. They were waiting here when we first developed the ability to travel between stars. Kethan's 4 eyes grew distant. The Makers seeded life across this galaxy. They guided the development of countless species. Then they vanished. They left behind only these words, these instructions, these promises. Promises of what? That they would return. That those who kept their faith would be rewarded. That the universe has meaning and purpose, and we are part of it. The young priest looked at her. That is what we believe. That is why we have dedicated our civilization to understanding their words. Alina was beginning to understand why she had been brought here. A language that no one could speak. A human who had a gift for languages. But something still did not make sense. Why me? She asked. You must have linguists of your own, scholars who have studied this their whole lives. Kethan hesitated, seemed to be deciding how much to tell her. Finally, he spoke. Our scholars have tried everything. Every technique. Every approach. They have failed for 10,000 years. High Priest Vorath believes that fresh eyes might see what familiar ones have missed. He paused again. There is also another reason, but it is not my place to explain it. Before Alina could ask more questions, they arrived at a great door. It opened without anyone touching it. Beyond was the most impressive chamber Alina had ever seen. The room was vast. The ceiling rose so high it disappeared into shadow. The walls were covered completely in Sorinthi script. Thousands of lines, millions of symbols, all of them glowing faintly with pale blue light. Stood a pillar of crystal, and within that crystal floated a single object. A black stone tablet covered in dense writing. High Priest Vorath stood beside the pillar. He looked older than he had on the station, weaker, but his 4 eyes were still sharp. "Welcome to the Temple of Echoes," he said. "This is the most sacred place in our theocracy. Only the highest priests are permitted to enter. And now you." Alina walked slowly into the room. She could not help herself. The writing called to her. It was like nothing she had ever seen, and yet somehow it felt familiar. Like a song she had heard long ago and forgotten. "We have studied your species," Vorath continued.
You are young.
"Your civilization has existed for only a tiny fraction of galactic history. You are violent. You fight wars over resources, over beliefs, over things you cannot even name. By most measures, you are insignificant." Alina said nothing. She had heard worse. "But your communication fascinates us." The priest moved closer. "You have many languages, many ways of speaking. This is rare among intelligent species. Most develop a single tongue and keep it. You've created thousands. And stranger still, you preserve the ones that die. You keep languages that no one speaks anymore. You study them. You honor them." His 4 eyes fixed on her face. Why? Alina thought about the question. It was the same thing he had asked her at the auction, but now it felt more important, more weighted, because languages are not just tools, she said slowly. They are ways of seeing the world. Each language contains ideas and concepts that do not exist in other languages. When a language dies, those ideas die with it. We lose a piece of possible understanding forever. She looked at the glowing script on the walls. Every language humanity has ever spoken is a different answer to the same question. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to think? We keep the dead languages because the answers still matter, even if the people who gave them are gone. Vorath was silent for a long time. Then he gestured to the black tablet floating in the crystal pillar. "This is the first text. The oldest artifact we possess. It has been here since before my species existed. It contains, we believe, the core teachings of the Makers. The truth of existence itself." His voice dropped lower. "And in 10,000 years, we have translated only fragments. The language resists us. It is as if it was designed for minds that work differently than ours." He looked at Alina with something that might have been hope. "We have brought linguists from 100 worlds to study these texts. All have failed. But none of them came from a species with 7,000 languages. None of them carried the memories of 1,000 dead tongues in their minds." Alina understood now. She understood why she was here. They had paid so much for her. They had been so kind. They believed she might be able to do what no alien had done in 400,000 years. They believed she might be able to make the Makers speak again. And looking at those strange, beautiful symbols glowing on the walls around her, Alina felt something she had not felt in 8 months of captivity. She felt excited. "Show me everything," she said. She answered in a lost ancient tongue. The alien priest dropped his staff. Part 3. The shape of old words. 3 months passed on Valeth Prime. Alina worked every day in a large room called the scriptorium. It was filled with scrolls and tablets and glowing screens that displayed the Sorinthi texts. 12 Kethmari scholar priests worked alongside her. They had dedicated their entire lives to studying the language of the Makers. Some of them had been working on a single passage for over 50 years. They did not like Alina. She understood why. She was an outsider, a human, creature from a young and violent species that had not earned its place among the stars. And yet here she was, given access to their most sacred texts, allowed to touch artifacts that most Kethmari would never even see. It must have felt like an insult to them. Alina did not care if they liked her. She cared about the work, and the work was fascinating. The Sorinthi language was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It was complex in ways that seemed almost impossible. A single symbol could mean different things depending on where it appeared in a sentence. The grammar changed based on whether the speaker was talking about past, present, or future. Some concepts seemed to require sounds that no living species could make. But Alina had advantages that the Kethmari scholars did not have. She knew how languages died. Back on Earth, she had spent years studying dead languages. Latin, Sanskrit, Ancient Egyptian, Sumerian. She knew how languages changed over time. How sounds shifted, how grammar simplified or grew more complex, how words borrowed from one language could reshape another. The The Kethmari scholars treated Sorinthy like a sacred puzzle. They approached it with reverence and caution. They were afraid to make mistakes. Afraid to guess wrong about what the makers meant, Alina was not afraid to be wrong. She made guesses. She tested theories. She compared Sorinthy to every dead language she knew, looking for patterns that might connect them, and slowly she began to find them. It started with small things. A symbol that appeared in what seemed like a greeting. A pattern of sounds that repeated in what looked like a prayer. She built a model in her mind, piece by piece, word by word. She did not share everything she learned with the Kethmari scholars. She gave them fragments, enough to show progress, enough to stay valuable. But she kept her biggest discoveries to herself because she had learned something else, something important. The Temple of Echoes was not just a place of worship. It was built on top of something much older, a structure that existed before the Kethmari came to this world, a sealed vault that even the highest priests could not enter. Elena found references to this vault in the secular texts, not the sacred scriptures, but the ordinary documents. Trade records, inventory lists, shipping manifests. It's a kind of boring paperwork that every civilization produces. The Kethmari scholars had mostly ignored these texts. They were not considered holy. They did not contain the great truths of the makers. But Alina knew something the scholars had forgotten. The most useful information about any language came from how ordinary people used it. Not from prayers and poetry, but from shopping lists and complaints and everyday conversations. The secular documents told her things the sacred texts never could. They told her how Sorinthy actually sounded, how real people spoke it, what words they used most often, and they told her about the vault. The makers had built an installation. Beneath what would later become the Temple of Echoes, they had sealed it with a lock that could only be opened one way. Not with a key. Not with a code. With a voice? Someone had to speak to the vault in proper Sorinthy, and the vault would respond. For 10,000 years, the Kethmari had tried to open that vault. Their greatest priests had stood before the sealed door and spoken their best attempts at the ancient language. None of them had succeeded. The vault remained closed. The secrets inside remained hidden. Elena began to understand the true reason she was here. The Kethmari did not just want to understand Sorinthy, they wanted to speak it. They wanted to open that vault and claim whatever power lay inside. She shared this discovery with Keithon one evening as they walked through the temple gardens. The young acolyte had become something like a friend to her over the past months. He was curious and kind, and he did not treat her like a clever animal the way the older priests did. "You are correct," Kethan admitted. His 4 eyes looked troubled. "The vault of first speaking is our greatest mystery. High Priest Voreth has dedicated his life to opening it. He believes that the makers left something inside for us. A gift, a message, perhaps even the secret of their return." "What do you believe?" Alina asked. Kethan was quiet for a moment. "I believe that faith should not require proof. If the makers wished us to have what is in the vault, they would have given us the words to open it. Perhaps some doors are meant to stay closed. It is not what Voreth thinks. No, it is not." The young priest looked around to make sure they were alone. "There are things you should know. Voreth is dying. He has perhaps 30 cycles remaining. When he dies, there will be a struggle for succession. Several high priests believe they should lead after him. If Voreth can open the vault before he dies, his chosen successor will inherit an empire. If he cannot, ... Talk trailed off. Lena finished. Perhaps worse." Kethan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Some of the other priests do not trust you. They believe Voreth is wasting resources on a human who will never succeed. They want you removed from the project. Some want you removed permanently." Elena felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She had survived 8 months of slavery by being useful. If she stopped being useful to Voreth, she would become a problem. And problems were eliminated. "How much time do I have?" "I do not know. Weeks. Maybe less." Kethan reached out and touched her arm gently. It was a gesture of friendship. "I have watched you work. I have seen the progress you make. You are closer to understanding Sorinthy than any scholar in 10,000 years. But close is not enough. Vorith needs results. He needs proof that you can do what no one else has done. Alina nodded slowly. She had been holding back, protecting herself by not revealing everything she knew. But if she ran out of time, none of that would matter. She went back to the scriptorium that night. She worked until the twin suns rose. She compared her reconstructed pronunciation, modeled to every ancient human language she could. Remember, Sanskrit, Tamil, Proto-Indo-European, the deep roots of human speech that stretched back tens of thousands of years, and she found something impossible. The patterns matched. Not perfectly. Not completely. But far more than random chance would allow. The basic sound structures of Sorinthy echoed through human linguistic history, like a song passed down through countless generations, the way certain consonants clustered together. The rhythm of syllables, the deep grammar that underlay surface differences. It was as if humanity had once known this language, or something very close to it. As if the makers had not just visited Earth, but had left a piece of themselves in the way humans spoke. Alina sat back in her chair. Her hands were shaking. She thought about what this meant. If she was right, then humanity was not just a random species that happened to develop language skills. Humans were connected to the makers somehow, children of the first voice. Inheriting a gift they never knew they had, the Kethmari had. Received one sacred text and built a religion around it. Humanity. Had received 1,000 languages and forgotten. Where they came from, Alina made a decision. She would stop holding back. She would show Vorath exactly what she could do. She would speak Sorinthy the way it was meant to be spoken, and then she would find out what the makers had left behind. She answered in a lost ancient tongue. The alien priest dropped his staff part 4. The voice remembered. The summons came in the middle of the night. Alina was asleep in her small room when 2 Kethmari guards appeared at her door. They said nothing. They simply waited for her to dress and follow them. Their faces were impossible to read. Something in the way they moved told her. This was not a routine meeting. They led her through empty corridors and down staircases she had never seen before. The temple grew older around her. The smooth white walls gave way to rough gray stone. The glowing lights became flickering torches. They were going deep beneath the Temple of Echoes. Deeper than she had ever been. Finally, they reached a chamber. It was small and circular with a single door on the far wall. High Priest Vorath stood in the center of the room. Kethan stood behind him, looking frightened. There were no other priests present. No scholars. No witnesses. That scared Alina more than anything else. "Leave us," Vorath said to the guards. They bowed and departed. The old priest turned his 4 eyes toward Alina. In the torchlight, he looked ancient, tired, but there was something fierce burning behind that exhaustion. "You have been deceiving me," he said. Alina's heart pounded in her chest. She kept her face calm. "I do not understand. Do not lie to me, human. I am old, not stupid." Vorath took a step closer. His staff tapped against the stone floor. "I have watched your work. I have read your notes. I have seen what you share with my scholars and what you keep hidden. You understand far more of Sorinthy than you have revealed. There's no point in denying it." Alina nodded slowly. "Yes. Why? Why hide your progress? You know what happens to those who are no longer useful here?" Lena met his gaze. 4 alien eyes staring into 2 human ones. "Because knowledge is power, and I have very little power in this place. The more I know that others do not, the more valuable I remain. The harder I am to dispose of." Vorath stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a wet, rasping sound, full of pain and something that might have been respect. "Clever," he said. "Very clever. Perhaps your species is not as foolish as I believed." He gestured to the sealed door behind him. "Do you know what this is?" "The Vault of First Speaking," Alina said. "The installation the makers left behind. The door that can only be opened by speaking Sorinthy correctly. You have done your research." Vorath moved aside so she could see the door clearly. It was made of some black metal that seemed to drink in the torchlight. Strange symbols covered its surface. Not Sorinthy exactly, but something related. something older. For 10,000 years the faithful have stood before this door, Vorath said. His voice had grown soft, almost reverent. Our greatest priests, our wisest scholars, they have spoken their best attempts at the ancient tongue. All have failed. The Maker's systems do not recognize our voices. The door remains sealed. The secrets remain hidden. He turned back to Alina. I am dying. I have perhaps 30 cycles remaining. I have served the Makers my entire life. I have prayed to them. I have studied their words. I have dedicated everything I am to understanding their will. His 4 eyes glistened with tears. I will not die without hearing their voice. I will not leave this world without knowing what they left for us. Alina felt something shift inside her. She had thought of Vorath as a powerful master, a dangerous man who could dispose of her whenever he wished. But looking at him now, she saw something else. A tired old man who had spent his entire life searching for something he could never find. A believer who wanted more than anything for his faith to be rewarded. You think I can open it? She said. I think you might be the only one who can. Vorath reached into his robes and pulled out a data tablet. I have studied your species extensively. Your world is young, but your languages are strange. You have thousands of them. They change and evolve and split into new forms constantly. This is unusual. Most intelligent species develop a single stable tongue. He handed her the tablet. On the screen were graphs and charts showing linguistic patterns. Alina recognized some of them immediately. These are phonetic structures from ancient human languages, she said. Sanskrit, Sumerian, Proto-Dravidian. Yes, and these, Vorath tapped the screen, are the phonetic structures we have reconstructed from Soranthi texts. Alina looked at the comparison. Her breath caught in her throat. The patterns were almost identical. This is not coincidence, Vorath said. The mathematical structures underlying your oldest languages mirror the structures of Soranthi too closely to be random chance. Either your people knew the Makers, or you are their children. Either they visited your world and taught you to speak, or they created you with the capacity for their language already built into your minds. Alina thought about her research, the connections she had found, the impossible similarities. Evolution guided is still evolution, she murmured. Exactly. Vorath's voice grew urgent. The Makers seeded life across this galaxy. They shaped countless species, but perhaps they shaped yours differently. Perhaps they gave you something they did not give the rest of us. The ability to speak as they spoke, to hear as they heard. He gestured toward the sealed door. Speak to the vault. In the old tongue, as your reconstruction suggests, it should sound. If you fail, you will be well treated. I give you my word. But if you succeed, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Alina walked slowly toward the door. The black metal seemed to pulse slightly as she approached, as if it could sense her presence. The symbols carved into its surface were clearer now. She could read some of them, fragments of meaning that her months of study had unlocked. She thought about everything she knew, every pattern she had found, every connection between Soranthi and the ancient tongues of Earth. She had built a pronunciation model in her mind. It was not perfect, maybe 60% accurate, maybe less, but it was the best attempt anyone had made in 400,000 years. She took a deep breath, and she spoke. The words felt strange in her mouth. Alien sounds shaped by a human throat. But they also felt right somehow, natural, like a song she had always known, but never sung out loud. She spoke a greeting she had reconstructed from old trade documents. A simple phrase that merchants might have used when meeting strangers. The meaning was something like, I return to the place of beginning. I carry the voice forward. Her pronunciation was not perfect. Her grammar was uncertain, but the words came out clear and strong, echoing off the stone walls of the chamber. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the symbols on the door began to glow. Light pulsed through the carved lines like blood through veins. Blue at first, then white, then a color Alina had no name for. The entire door seemed to come alive, and then the door spoke back. A voice emerged from the walls themselves. It was neither male nor female, neither old nor young. It was clear and beautiful and ancient, beyond comprehension. It spoke in Sorinthi, perfect Sorinthi. The language, as it was meant to sound. Alina understood perhaps one word in three, but she understood enough. The vault was asking her a question. It wanted to know who she was, where she came from, why she had returned after so long. She answered haltingly, imperfectly, but she answered behind her. She heard a clatter of metal against stone. She turned. High Priest Voroth had dropped his staff. The old alien had fallen to his knees. Tears streamed from all four of his eyes. His attendant Kethon knelt beside him, staring at Alina with an expression of pure shock, for the first time in 400,000 years. Someone was speaking to the Maker systems, and she was human. The door began to open. She answered in a lost ancient tongue. The alien priest dropped his staff. Part 5. Children of the first voice, the door opened slowly. Ancient machinery groaned and clicked after 400,000 years of silence. Blue light spilled out from within, washing over Elena's face like cold water. She stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. Behind her, Voroth was still on his knees. The old priest was whispering prayers in his native tongue. Tears continued to fall from his 4 eyes. Kethan helped him stand. The young acolyte's own hands were shaking. Alina stepped forward into the vault. She did not know what she expected to find. Weapons, perhaps? Technology beyond imagination. Gold and jewels and treasures from a civilization that had mastered the stars. Before her ancestors had learned to walk upright, what she found was a library. The chamber was vast. Crystalline pillars rose from floor to ceiling, each one filled with swirling lights. The lights moved in patterns that seemed almost alive. Data, Alina realized. Information stored in ways she could not begin to understand. This was not a treasure vault. This was an archive, a record of everything the Makers had known and done and been. The voice spoke again. It came from everywhere and nowhere. It welcomed her. It called her something she did not fully understand. The closest translation was voice carrier, or perhaps child of echoes. Alina walked deeper into the archive. Her fingers brushed against one of the crystal pillars. Images flooded her mind. Visions of worlds she had never seen. Species she had never met. A history that stretched back millions of years. The Makers had been real. They had risen on a world far across the galaxy. They had developed technology that made the achievements of every other species look like children playing with toys. They had spread across the stars, exploring, learning, growing. And then, when they had learned everything there was to learn about the physical universe, they had made a choice. They had transcended. Alina did not fully understand what that meant. The concepts were too large for her mind to hold, but she grasped the basic truth. The Makers had left their physical forms behind. They had become something else. Something that existed beyond matter and energy. Something eternal, but they had not abandoned the galaxy completely. Before they left, they had seeded worlds with life. They had guided evolution on thousands of planets. They had shaped species and civilizations, nurturing them like gardeners tending a vast cosmic garden. Each species was an experiment. Each one was given different gifts, different challenges, different paths to follow. The Kethmari had been given faith, a deep spiritual connection to the universe, a desire to seek meaning and purpose in all things. Humanity had been given something else. Alina found the records of Earth. She watched the Makers visit her world over 100,000 years ago. She saw them observe the early humans. She saw them make a decision that would change everything. They did not give humanity a single gift. They did not teach humans one language or one truth. Instead, they planted a seed deep within human minds. A capacity, a potential, the ability to create endless variations of language and thought, the power to see the universe in 1,000 different ways and hold all those visions at once. The Makers had given every other species a fish. They had taught humanity how to fish in waters no one else could. See, Alina understood now why human languages echoed Sorinthy. It was not because humans had learned from the makers. It was because the makers had built the foundations of their own language into human minds. Every tongue humanity had ever spoken was a variation on a theme the makers had composed. Every word was a note in a song that stretched back to the beginning of intelligent life. The Kethmari had received one sacred text and built a religion around it. Humanity had received the ability to write infinite texts and had forgotten. It was a gift at all. Vort entered the vault behind her. His movements were slow and careful. His eyes were wide with wonder. "What is this place?" he whispered. "Archive," Alina said. "Everything the makers knew. Everything they did. It is all here." She showed him what she had found. The history of the makers. The truth about their seeding program. The revelation that every intelligent species in the galaxy was, in some way, their child. The old priest listened in silence. When she finished, he asked only one question. "Does it say when they will return?" Alina accessed another section of the archive. She had to try several times before she found the right records. When she did, she felt her heart sink. "They are not coming back," she said quietly. "They left a message. It says," she struggled to translate the concepts into words that made sense. "It says they left the galaxy to their children. All of us. Every species they created. They did not want us to wait for them forever. They wanted us to grow up. To take responsibility for ourselves and each other." Vorath was silent for a long time. His 4 eyes stared at nothing. "Then everything we believed was wrong," he said at last. "We built our entire civilization on the promise that the makers would return. That if we kept faith, we would be rewarded. And it was all a lie." "Not a lie," Alina said. "A misunderstanding. They did leave something for you. For all of us. It's just not what you expected." She gestured to the archive around them. "This is the reward. Knowledge, truth, the chance to finally understand where we came from and what we are meant to become." The makers did not want worshippers. They wanted heirs. Alina found another section of the archive. Coordinates, star maps, locations of other vaults scattered across the galaxy, other tests, other gifts, other pieces of the puzzle that the makers had left behind. "There is more," she said. "This is not the only vault. There are hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Each one contains different knowledge. Different tools. The makers wanted whoever opened this vault to share what they found, to bring the other species together, to help everyone grow." Vorath laughed. It was a bitter sound. "Share. Do you know what this information would do to my theocracy? We have ruled 1,000 worlds because we claim to be the chosen servants of the makers. If other species learn the truth, our power disappears. There will be chaos, war. Everything we built will collapse." "Maybe," Alina said. "Or maybe something better will rise in its place." She looked at the old priest. She thought about the thousands of humans still enslaved across the galaxy. She thought about all the species who had been taught to bow before the Kethmari because of a faith built on incomplete understanding. "You have a choice," she said. "You can bury this. Kill me. Seal the vault again. Protect your power for a few more generations until someone else finds the truth. Or you can do what the makers actually wanted. Share what you know. Let everyone grow together. Be remembered as the priest who finally opened the door instead of the one who kept it closed." Vorath stared at her. His 4 eyes were unreadable. Then he turned to Kethan. "Prepare a broadcast," he said. "Full galactic transmission. Every world. Every species." He looked back at Alina. "If we are going to tear down everything I have built, we might as well do it properly." The broadcast went out 3 days later. Alina stood beside Vorath as he spoke to 1,000 worlds. He told them the truth. All of it. He showed them the archive. He shared the coordinates of other vaults. He invited every species to claim their inheritance together. The reaction was exactly what Vorath had predicted. Chaos, anger, disbelief. Some worlds rejected the message as lies. Some demanded proof. Some began preparing for war, but others reached out. Species that had been enemies for centuries sent messages asking questions. Scholars from across the galaxy requested access to the archive. And slowly, carefully, something new began to take shape. Alina did not stay on Valith Prime. There was too much work to do. She traveled to the other vaults, opening doors that had been sealed for hundreds of thousands of years. She taught other species to speak the fragments of Sorinthy she had learned. She helped translate the Maker's knowledge into languages everyone could understand, and everywhere she went, she searched for her people, the humans who had been scattered and enslaved. One by one, she found them. She freed them. She told them who they really were, children of the first voice, carriers of a gift they had never known they possessed, humanity's journey to the stars had begun with a single colony ship captured by Slavs, would continue as something far greater. The universe had been waiting for someone who could listen to all the voices, someone who could speak 1,000 languages and hear the truth in each one, someone willing to learn instead of conquer, to understand instead of dominate. The Makers had been waiting for humanity, and humanity was finally ready to answer.